So far on Cheesy Beans, we've had several different guests. We've had Noah from Pavilion talk about cowboy rock. We've had an old friend of mine, Joseph Slater, aka Slats, talk about random fucking memories. And now I've decided that it's time to kick things up a notch and time to get some fucking rock and roll stars involved. So today's guest, his band has been around for, say, over 5 years from the pictures I've seen, and they've managed to land themselves support slots with some bands that I fucking adore, like Life and The Blinders. They've played the multiple packed crowds at Fibbers and are continuing to push boundaries every second of the day. It's a privilege to welcome to the show a man who says fuck societal standards, I'm gonna wear a dress and look beautiful. Hello Rue, thank you for being on the show. It is brilliant and I feel honoured and privileged.
Thank you very much. That's like the nicest intro I've ever had. I feel honoured and privileged to be here. Thank you for the compliment as well. I don't get called beautiful a lot, but that's really nice.
Anyone who is willing to put themselves out there like that and take such a bold move is beautiful in my eyes.
I really appreciate it.
In terms of, because people who I've interviewed so far, people kind of know the band and have seen interviews or met them and stuff. I was just wondering if you could briefly outline the band, the members, and what your sound is kind of like.
So there is 4 of us. On the drums, there is Joey, who is just he looks a little bit like Steve Shelley from Sonic Youth, but then hits like Dave Grohl. Maybe related to somebody in Weezer. He kind of looks like that too. But he's a very cool guy. Loves to stack shelves in his spare time. I hear that's what he likes doing.
Quality.
And there is Arthur, who plays bass. He's very, very tall boy. I suspect he probably has quite a long penis as well. He's very good. He's got all the wet kind of effects and stuff, and just general kind of foreplay as well. And then on guitar there is Lewis, who is like a super kind of very technically amazing guitarist, but he's kind of like if you took someone who played classical music and then just got them into crack for 6 years. So he has all the technique, but then he's also had some very scarring life experiences that make him sound like that. And then there is me, who sing and play guitar.
No, that's cool. So the next question is, do you remember the first time that we informally met, shall we say?
That we informally met? I'd have to say I don't think I can do, man. I'm really sorry. I know that's a really
Well, to be honest with you, that's fine, because the first time I heard you was when you supported Life, and at the gig, there were photos taken, and I'd like to first of all say it's the only and it's the last gig that I'll ever take my top off at and be masculine at. And obviously there are many pictures if you go on Life's Instagram of me topless crowd surfing, and I came to know of you from that gig, but also my band messaged on one of your socials about supporting you, and you said unfortunately I hadn't sorted out, I think it was for Independent Venue Week.
Yeah.
The following message was, holy shit, and then it was that picture, and then it said, oh, that's fucking you, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, it is me. And then I found out that was your manager. So obviously I hope your manager likes crotches in his face.
I'm sure he will do. I'm pretty sure it's what he's doing right now, so I will pass that on. I'm sure your crotch is very much appreciated.
Your name, Faux Pas, was wondering, where did it come from?
I think it was originally our previous bassist, a guy called Morgan, who actually came up with it. But I think previously we used to be called, this is like, back in the Stone Ages, obviously, as all bands start. But yeah, We used to be called Among the Last, but it was like a super kind of lame, you know, it was like a pretty like kind of
like
emo
a
sound.
metally emo sort of vibe.
Not very cricket, but yeah, we used to be called that. And then I remember we'd been thinking for a little while. I remember I used to push quite a lot to change the name because I didn't like the name. I really didn't like the name. I was just like, I think we should change the name completely. And then Morgan just came up with it. I think after a while of pushing it, everyone was kind of coming around to the idea of it. And then Morgan just came up with it, and we were all like, yeah, I kind of like that. And then
It's a good name.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think I typed it in on Google, and it was something related to something like, I feel like it either to this or I've just totally made it up. It's about someone like a silly man who does silly sort of things and knows to do silly sort of things. Which, having a name, if that is what it actually means, if I haven't just fucking made that up, I might have. But if that's what it is, it's cool. It's cool to have a name and have a meaning, and then have a story as well behind it. Like, there's people who I've interviewed so far, like a bass player from a band called Where Slater said his name came from, he met someone called Slater in the Czech Republic and gave him loads of insight and loads of knowledge, and just was very insightful to him, and he's saying that the band is representing the search for Slater. So I was sort of, and when he said that, I was sort of like, it's a shame that Everything After Midnight's name was just a list. Oh, I know that sounds good. But it's cool hearing all these stories. Moving on to the bulk of the interview, which is about Guerrilla Man, the alternate version. And obviously, I've listened to it several times, and it is fantastic. I've also listened to it on YouTube as an old version. And I always think that in terms of songs, you can always tell a good song when you can play it full on electric, loud, and you can strip it down and it still has the same impact or even more impact. And we'll talk about like the meaning behind it in a bit. But I was just wondering, why did you opt to release a stripped back version of the song rather than the loud electric version?
Well, I think the version that is released now, the alternate version, was the first version of it that was ever really written, because it was something that I just had. I don't want to be that really sort of like douchey thing of like I just played it in my bedroom all the time, but you know, it was just something that I had that I'd written. I think initially I didn't really intend on bringing it to the band because I felt like it was nice just to leave it in that kind of space, you know, where it is at the minute, where it's really kind of quiet and delicate and vulnerable, and there isn't, you know, it doesn't have a lot of the kind of trademarks that we do, you know, the kind of screaming guitars, the big drums, anything like that. It's just pretty sort of standalone and transparent, really. But yeah, and then I remember I brought it to the guys, and you know, we incorporated it into the EP project that we did, that we've just recorded actually, and and then it just became like I don't want to say like a totally different song, you know, like you can't tell what it is, but it's just it feels like a much more embellished, grand version of the song, something that I think does incorporate a lot of the maybe slightly more, you know, classic kind of techniques and trademarks that we do use in a lot of our music. So to me, it doesn't necessarily feel like, you know, I don't feel like there's an alternate version and an original version per se. It's more that they're just slightly different versions. So like this one's an alternate version, and then that one's just an alternate version, but in a different kind of style. So I think you know, because we're going to be, you know, hopefully getting this EP out at some point, we were looking to get something out, and we had this recorded. We had the video recorded for it for a while, so
yeah,
I felt like, you know, maybe now at a point where gigs aren't really happening, everything's kind of like quiet and dead, it would be a good time to put something like this out, because, you know, it doesn't need to be the kind of thing where you'll necessarily hear it in a big audience. It can just be something that you kind of listen to while you go watch the shop or something like that.
No, I think it's like, in terms of the song, like hearing it both ways. Like at first when I heard this ultimate version, we'll call just for the sake of what is on Spotify, and the loud one, which was at the Blinders gig in York.
Oh yeah.
2 recordings. Like, at first I thought they don't sound like the same song, but in a certain way it's sort of nice that regardless of which way it was around, you obviously kind of kept the main premise of the song and then worked it in a different way. So it's still the same song, but it's still 2 different angles at it. But they're both cool versions, and I dig them both a lot. So in the song, the central theme surrounds relationships with a father figure, whoever that might be. I was just wondering, how important is the relationship you have with your father figure, or how important do you feel it should be?
It's a really good question. I think I don't think it's necessarily so much about it being a father figure per se. I think it's more to do with like just being like a parental kind of, you know, guardian-esque figure, somebody in that kind of mold. Because you know, I think everyone can look back over their lives and their childhoods in particular, and look back at some really key moments where they've been taught some totally invaluable life lessons by somebody who has been in that position. And I think we often sort of take these relationships for granted, and you kind of just sort of breeze past them, and you'll think that's just part of growing up. You know, this is life. We get older, we sort of move apart a little bit. And at the same time, I think, you know, part of growing up, or at least in my experience, has been that as you grow up, you become more aware of the struggle that these kind of people have, you know, gone throughout their lives. You know, whether it's, I don't know, getting fired and then having a really glum kind of financial time in their lives, and then somehow managing to pull themselves through it. This isn't, you know, me speaking from experience, but just for example's sake. But you know, at the end of the day, everyone experiences struggle in the same kind of way, regardless of what that struggle is. So it's just about turning around and giving recognition to those kinds of people, whether it is a father, whether it is a parent, a mother, a guardian, you know, whoever, really. I think it's just important to look at those people, because, yeah, going back to the childhood stuff, you know, when you look back and you think, oh, this is something that I've learned that maybe I didn't totally take in at the time. I didn't really take it in for what it was. I think it gives you a whole new kind of perception as to who that person is and what they've given you over the course of your life, and then makes you feel that much more grateful for the experience that you've had.
No, I mean, I do agree. There's a lot of things, like, even now I take things for granted. Like, for example, with my dad, I regularly go, not as much now that I'm at university, but I do go to gigs with him, and I've been to see like the Pixies and stuff. And
Nice.
Not last summer, but the summer before, me and my whole family went to Kendal Calling.
Yeah.
I always tell this story about my dad. We went because we wanted to see idols. Like, there was other bands playing like Chic and stuff, and like they're obviously fucking great, but we wanted to see idols, and I felt like you had to see them on like that kind of sort of tour they were doing that year, because it was like a big deal for them. And at the very last song, he was like right in the mosh pit and stuff. Like he's like, you know, getting the mid-50s now, and he's still fucking giving it 6 now and stuff. But the last song was Rottweiler, and my mate went to crowd surf, and he looked like he was going to fall. As my dad grabbed him, his glasses fell off, and his glasses are worth like £400. So it's safe to say that my mother was very annoyed. But luckily my mate had spare ones, and my dad wore them, and he looked like someone from like Orbital on like DJ decks. It was very amusing. But those sort of things in terms of going to gigs and stuff with my dad, like, I know I'm really taking them for granted right now, and I know in like maybe not even 10 years, like, I'll look back on it and be like, fucking hell, I can't believe he did that. And it was a nice reflection, because I think your song made me think about that more. And I like it when you listen to some sort of, you know, whether it's music or whatever, and you listen to something, and I like it when it makes you think. That's why I like Life, Blinders, Idols, because you listen to it and it makes you think about things that you wouldn't normally. And I think your song about the relationship with whoever the parental figure is, or whoever it is, you know, it was a very nice thing to have. So in terms of society, do you think that the relationships you have with parents or guardians are really neglected when growing up? And do you think that society dictates how we should view our parents in a way?
I'm not so sure whether or not I personally would sort of say it's society. I think it works in more of a kind of like family to family basis. The thing that I've noticed a lot is, as you grow up, and I'm sure you'll notice as well, but you find that your friends, your peers, girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever, they'll all have like really drastically different kind of environments. And think back to when you were a kid and you went over to someone's house for tea or whatever, and there's obviously they just do something in a slightly different way. Even things like having fucking music on when you're eating, or like everyone will just sit around with the TV rather than sitting around a table, that kind of thing. So I don't know, maybe I'm just being a little bit naive with that, but I like to think it's maybe more of a sort of family by family basis, because I know some families that are very much once you get to a certain age, it's kind of like, right, your parents have done their job, this is the cut-off point, and then you kind of go out from there and do your thing. And I know some that are really kind of keen to stay in touch and reunite as much as possible and still try and keep that connection there. So I don't know whether or not society, to the best of my knowledge at least, like I said, I'm not very well versed in a lot of societal sort of practice, so I'm not sure whether I would be able to say that it is to do with that. But I think that certain things like TV, film, with the way they depict families, like even in stuff like soaps, which sounds like really stupid. But I'm not in any way a massive advocate of Coronation Street or anything like that. I think it's fun to watch if you're really hungover, because it's quite funny. But stuff like that will always, give such sort of strong depictions of family dynamics that I think maybe the slightly sort of damaging thing with regards to that is that it can sometimes be slightly exclusive to people who have family dynamics that aren't necessarily represented in things like that, or in things like film where people might feel abnormal because their family is not the way that it is seen on the TV, that kind of thing. But I think in reality everyone's family has some really beautiful parts to it, and I've yet to find anyone in life whose family is not held together in some way by some really beautiful, strong, completely passionate people that just have an immense amount of love and care for their family and the way that everyone is with one another, whether it's in a really obvious kind of Disney way where everyone like comes over and hugs and whatever, or whether it's in the more subtle kind of glances, the small gestures, the things like that. I think everyone is held together by things like that, and I feel desperately sorry for those who unfortunately don't experience that, because I know that does occur. I'm not going to be totally pious and just say everyone has a family, but some people don't experience those things. But it doesn't necessarily just mean the mother, the father, the parents. Some people I know have found family in the friendship groups they've cultivated, and that works for them.
No, I think in terms of a family by family basis is probably a better way of viewing it. Would you say that, so when you talk about Disney and stuff like that, how sometimes people look at that and say that's how the family should be, would you say that now family and relationships like that are more dictated to by kind of media and kind of film rather than like how other people view it, or do you just think it's still it's just how your personal experiences?
I think it will to a certain extent, but I can only really, speaking from personal experience, I think it's more to do with that influencing the way that a child's view on their family will be. Like, I don't think, I don't think parents will, or at least in my own experience, I can say I don't feel like parents will necessarily take that much from it, or whether they will be completely influenced. Obviously they might be, because everything in the media is done with some sort of fictitious motive behind it to kind of brainwash and butterfuck everyone's minds. So I don't know, maybe slightly more for the kids, but maybe that's just me speaking from personal experience. I can't really say, I think.
The thing is, I've recently been speaking to my parents about just like their relationships with their parents, and then their friends and their relationship with parents, even my friends, and just the relationships within a family. And I do think, like, I view my upbringing as very positive, and I probably share the similar view with you in terms of being or the loving family, and everyone just being there for one another. But I do agree, it does make it sad. Like, there are people who I know who just don't have relationships with parents, and it's just sad that the people who brought them into this world and the people who brought them up and kind of made them, to an extent, who they are, with a few bits here and there which they found themselves. It's sad that they don't have that kind of feeling. Does the rest of your band share the view that you have with relationships and families?
Yeah, I think so. I think everyone has different relationships within their family, so I can't necessarily speak for everyone with that, but I know that everyone shares essentially what is the message of the song, that is if you recognize that somebody has done a great deal for you throughout your life and has shown an immense amount of love and support, that you should just turn around and show some gratitude every now and then, really. I like to think that everyone's got pretty positive relationships with their family, even though they might be on different terms. Some people might speak about, I know that I, for example, am very, very open with my mother, and can speak to her about sex and drugs and things like that, which I know some people are just like, oh no, like I can't do that, and that's fair enough. Obviously, I know that I'm weird to some people for doing that kind of thing, but I think everyone has a similarly positive sort of feeling towards their family, and even if it's not necessarily in the moment where they feel completely comfortable being around them all the time, or they feel comfortable with some of the things that have happened, I think everyone is fairly safe in the knowledge that their parents have done all they can do for them, really.
In terms of when you were growing up and you had friends and you were kind of let's say from like the age of 5 to 18, was there ever anything said to you when you told your friends, like, I told my mum this? Was there anyone who was ever really critical of you? I'm not saying name and shame, but I'm saying, has there ever been a situation where there's something you have in terms of a relationship with your family and you've told a friend about it and the friend has completely turned around being like, what the fuck are you doing?
No, not really, not that I can think of. Yeah, to be honest, when I would speak to my mother, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't speak to my father about anything like that.
Yeah.
And I think me and my brother struggled to get on for a while, so we didn't really, have a kind of relationship like that. So it was just really me and my mother, and it was never, to be honest, I was never really that close to, in terms of having friends, I was never really that close to anyone, I think, until I was maybe sort of, I don't know, like 15, 16. Like I had a couple of friends here and there, but I think I didn't have my first sort of like real good friends until I was maybe like 12, 13. And, by that point, to a certain extent, as sad as it is, I think my mother probably was one of my best friends in terms of being able to talk to her about everything, even though it might not necessarily have felt like that at the time. So, I can say, honestly, I've never really experienced that. I didn't, and I think at the time, if anyone had sort of been a bit weird, it may have affected me differently, but I've never, I can't really say I've encountered anything like that, to be honest, man. Sorry.
No, I mean, that's fair enough. I was just chancing me on, really, see if you had an experience. But I think when you're saying about that with your mum being like your best friend or whatever, I think that is a statement. If you told people that, I would say that. Not everyone, but I think some people would probably be like, wouldn't really kind of understand it. But
I think some people would probably think I'm a serial killer or something as well, but
But now with it, it's sort of like, there's nothing wrong with your mum being your best friend, or your dad, or your brother, or your sister. Like, and I'm not saying that in the case of like family is family and like blood is thicker than water and those sort of things. What I'm saying is that, like, if your mum or dad is a nice person and you get on with them and you go to the pub with them, or you go to a gig with them, or you go for a nice meal, that's absolutely fine. And I think some people might say they're embarrassed by that, but I'm never embarrassed by it. Like,
Good.
I don't know how many people can say, oh, my dad's been in an Idols mosh pit. Like, you know, and I can imagine you feel likewise the same.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, I think it's important to, you know, not feel envious for other people's families and just accept yours for being the one that it is. You know, like everyone's got their own sort of unique things. I was going to, you know, on one side of it, I would go to festivals. My mum to like Leeds Fest when I was like 12, and we'd stay in a camper van. And that would be really beautiful and special, and something that was incredibly formative. But then at the same time, I would also, you know, go to the football with my dad every week, like that kind of thing, and sit there on the front row. So I think it's just about sort of, you know, thinking, well, this is what I've got from the experience, and recognizing that you've probably had some really special moments with your parents. I think there's a lot of pressure for people to feel like they have quality time, but it doesn't necessarily mean in terms of like, you know, we did this holiday or we did XYZ or whatever. Like one of my examples is, you know, my dad would get up and drive me to school every morning, and that'd be it. And we'd listen to the same radio show, and we didn't really talk, to be honest, because we both just didn't really talk a lot. So we wouldn't really talk, but that would be it. We'd just sit in the car, listen to the same radio show, and then he'd pick me up and listen to the same one back every day at like 8 o'clock and then 3:30 for, you know, a good sort of 2-3 years, like that kind of thing. So sometimes it's just stuff like that. It doesn't have to be like, you know, this has happened for me or that's happened. It's just about saying, yeah, this was a time where you both were really there in the present. You felt completely comfortable, and that's all it was, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I used to have it where my dad would walk us to school whenever my mum was working shifts, and would go through North Shields, and I'd always get a Milky Way from the shop. And that was him basically giving us like a peace offering, saying, because obviously my mum wasn't taking us to school and she was working, my dad's peace offering us there's a Milky Way. And I always loved that. And then my mum used to do it on a Tuesday. I believe it was a Tuesday. If she watches this and it's not a Tuesday, sorry, Mum. But we used to go to McDonald's because it was a day off. She always cleaned the kitchen, and she used to just say, "There's no fucking way I'm cooking in this clean kitchen." Go to McDonald's, get a Happy Meal, good stuff.
Right on.
Talk about Guerrilla Man, and I've already mentioned in the introduction that you wear a dress when you play, and I was just wondering, why did you personally choose to wear a dress, if there is even a reason?
Well, I think at the start of kind of doing it, I felt very frustrated that at the time we would get lumped in with, like, you know, a lot of bands. I think because we looked quite young. We still look quite young now, even though we're like 22 to 26 and whatever. But I think we looked quite young, and I think people like lumped us in and sort of assumed that we were kind of like an indie band. There were a lot of indie bands from where we were from in New York, and that's fine, but it's just not the thing that we did. We didn't really come from the same sort of place in terms of ethos. I remember at the time we wrote an EP piece on rape culture and our experiences of encountering sexual abuse and things like that. So, you know, it didn't really feel right to be kind of associated with that. At the same time, you know, on a personal level, there's always been something within me that has been, you know, I suppose quite affluent with regards to things that are maybe more commonly associated with the feminine, things like makeup, wearing dresses, and whatever. And the stage is somewhere where I could essentially do that and just get away with it, and nobody would really say anything. So I think, you know, they were definitely the initial reasons that I started doing it. But I think as it sort of progressed more and more, you know, I remember there being points where, because some people would refer to it as like a gimmick and would say like, oh, it's a really cool gimmick that you've got there. And it would kind of, you know, annoy me a little bit because I'd kind of think in my head, I was like, well, it's not really a gimmick, actually. It is just a thing I enjoy doing. It's not like, you know, I'm not just doing this because it's the band and people go like, you're a boy in a dress, you're the boy in the dress in the band, that kind of thing. So I think that used to, you know, wear me away a little bit. And the more I've, you know, come to understand myself as an individual, which has, you know, miraculously coincided with the, you know, declining drug use, surprisingly enough. But the more I've come to understand myself on an individual level, the more I feel like I don't associate with necessarily the male or female gender, but I believe that the place I'm at the moment encompasses elements of both. So, you know, it's not necessarily a thing of being like, you know, I like wearing a dress on stage, or, you know, or I'm a guy and then a girl who wears clothes on stage or anything like that. It's kind of like, that's just part of who I am, really. So yeah, I guess that's all I've got for that, to be honest.
No, I think to be honest with you, it's quite nice and refreshing for you to say that, because I think at face value people would go, you're wearing a dress for showmanship or look good, but it's nice that you are in a situation where you do accept that that is something, like, it is sort of showmanship, but actually it's just because that's how you feel. And I think it's good though, because it means that it just shows you are a pure sort of person, in that you are doing something not for any other reason other than it's expression, and it's something which it's just I mean, being on stage, I know I can say you can do really everything and anything you really want to. And I know there's a lot of people who do things like maybe wear a dress or dress in a certain way or dye their hair in a certain way, and it's just to stand out and just so because it's an image thing. Whereas with you, it's good because it's not an image thing. It's really kind of the opposite. I mean, it's to do with the image, because you like to wear a dress and something, you like to look a certain way, and it's something how you feel, but at the same time you're doing it because it's you and only you.
Yeah, it's like there's you know, I would wear a dress on stage in the same way that somebody might wear a suit on stage, that kind of thing. So it doesn't necessarily feel like, you know, really kind of dressing up, but at the same time I really like to kind of feel beautiful on stage and feel really free. So when I wear a dress and I you know, even I'll wear a dress and some really like beat up old Converse I've had for like 5-6 years with holes in the bottom of them. I feel, you know, really kind of free and empowered in that moment, because, you know, I'm enjoying the way that I look. I've got the music screaming behind me, so it's kind of like, you know, you can completely just let go at that point and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, no, I mean, the benefit of being in alternative rock is that you can do whatever you want, and if anyone tells you otherwise, you just tell them to fuck off. So moving on from kind of the kind of look the band has, do you think that in a band, the way the band looks is equal to the sound, or even more so in modern music culture?
I think in modern music culture it is definitely. I don't think particularly in the genre that we operate in and that a lot of our peers operate in, because, you know, at the end of the day, like, it is like a really bullshit thing, isn't it? Like, there's no way to get around it, where it's like, oh, it's important how you look, and it's just one of the things that is completely bullshit. And some of the people that are a bit more sort of cynical will say, oh yeah, but you need to obviously be recognizable and whatever. But then that doesn't really make sense to me when people say you need to be recognizable, because there's such a hefty chunk of bands and artists that I know that all look like so fucking similar, like really similar, like clones that have been cryogenically Futurama style frozen and then like just popped out. It's weird, man. Like, it's really weird. And you just think, my God, like, do you all just get your haircut at the same salon? It's like, what the fuck is going on? I don't endorse haircuts either. So, but yeah, I just think that's like super weird. So I think, yeah, there is that side of it. But at the same time, I think a look can be an important way for an artist to express themselves if used in the right kind of way. You know, I think it's important just to have fun. Like, I think it's important just to have a bit of fun with the way you look, and not really like worry about it too much. you know, a lot of my favourite bands like the Pixies and Weezer, just look like they should all work in offices, really, shouldn't they?
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing about it. It's like you all look like you should work in fucking Virgin, and you're up here like shredding like hell. So I think that's a really fun thing with it. So I think it should just be, you know, when it comes to dress and stuff like that, it just shouldn't be taken too seriously. Like, I think it's nice to put stuff on. I definitely used to put an emphasis on something like character performance at a certain point, and sort of feeling like you kind of embody something once you step into this kind of attire. But I don't know. I don't feel like it should be completely, you know, dependent on how well or successful your career will go. I think it should just be something you have fun with, really.
Yeah, well, I think the thing with, I mean, obviously, like Pixies and Radiohead, as you've already said, those sort of bands, like, especially in, like, sort of grunge as well, it's like they didn't look the part. Like, I remember my dad watching Top of the Pops and the Pixies came on, and he heard them, and he was thinking like how they were going to look and stuff, and then he saw how they looked, and my dad was just like, well, they're just normal people. And I think that's why it was good, though, because that sort of music, it was getting the point across that you could make music as good as this, and you could just be the average Joe, as some may say. And I think that's like, I mean, in terms of me making music, and I'm sure you and the rest of your band feel the same, and I know my band feel the same, is the fact that we are in a situation where we can make music which we love, that other people around us love, and we can just look like the sort of normal person. I like that, and also I don't really fucking like having to have a very good band image. I know you've got to look, you can't like, you have to look some way like presentable a little bit, and you have to like, certainly, I don't really know, I like dressing the way I dress, and that's how I look in the band, and I wouldn't be wanting to do anything else. And if I wanted to dress differently, it'd be because I want to dress differently, rather than because some fucking corporate cunt was saying, oh, you've got to put on this or that, you know. So. Yeah,
just do you at the end of the day. Like, that's the only person that you can legitimately do. So don't do somebody else, just do what you do. Because, like, you know, it's very obvious when somebody is very uncomfortably like they're like in these like skinny jeans and like tight leather and nipple rings or whatever, and you can tell they're just like going like, fuck this inside. So just do you at the end of the day, and that will come across to the audience.
No, I totally agree. So the last kind of question I want to ask you before the quick fire round was, in past pictures there have been other band members who seem to have been and gone, but another thing I noticed was there was a couple of pictures of you, I believe at Thibbers, being lead singer and being the bassist, and then obviously you've swapped now to predominantly sing and play guitar. I was just wondering, why did that happen, and what set that course of events?
So I think when I joined the band, I was just singing, but I really wasn't comfortable with that at all, because, you know, for one reason or another, I wasn't comfortable just doing singing. You know, I didn't really like it, and I kind of, you know, was really looking for a way to kind of like play something at the same time, because I suppose it feels like a shield in a kind of way. You know, you can almost hide behind a guitar a little bit. So I played bass from that point for a little bit. I remember Jam, our old bassist, he left because, you know, I think it was like a string of rehearsals that he missed, and, you know, it just didn't feel like he was totally into it. And to be fair, I think he probably just wasn't really that into it. So I think it was that kind of thing. And then, so I played bass, and then I remember at the time Morgan and Lewis were playing guitars, but the thing I found was that I was writing like a lot of the music, and I was writing a lot of the guitar stuff, and I think as I sort of started to get more and more passionate over like what was written, and maybe slaving over it a little bit more, I didn't totally feel comfortable writing parts, and then having them played like in a slightly different way, that felt a little bit weird to me, and I just didn't really enjoy it. So I kind of pushed for that for a while, And then I think, and then eventually Morgan was like, all right, fine, I'll play bass, and then I played guitar. I think it took me a while to kind of get to the point where I needed to be, and the thing is, I think it's taught me like something really important, that when you change members and when things change, like there's no point trying to go back and do it in the way that you would do it then, because it just won't work. Like there are certain key trademarks. Like Morgan, was a really good sort of like powerful player, like really kind of heavy hitting, really accurate player. But I think, I wanted something slightly different from that guitar. So I think when we did it the other way and he played bass, there was something that we found slightly lacking from the bass at that point, because I got really tired from Joey, and something slightly lacking from the power. So we were initially a little bit like, this is a bit weird. But then you just kind of adapt after a certain point, and you find out what the strengths are of the other people. I like to think I've got certain sort of stylistic things that I feel really comfortable and able to kind of express in a really positive way when I play. And Morgan just got really tight and powerful with his bass playing. And then then obviously Morgan left about the same time as our manager a couple of years ago, and Arthur came in. Arthur was only supposed to really stand in, but I think he ended up standing in for about a year and a half, and then he joined. But yeah,
so he basically just joined.
He came in, and he was like, hands down, he was just a guitarist, like straight up. Like he played like a guitarist, like he riffs all the time, like he can shred like a guitarist basically, and he's a much better player than I am. So we never really expected him to play it like a bassist. It was just like, you can basically just have freedom. It's like having a psychedelic rock kind of bassist. They're doing it at the same time. And then again, the sound would adapt. I found that with Arthur being there, we can actually rely on him a lot more to fill a lot more space, because he's a lot more adventurous with his pedals and the way he creates texture and stuff like that. And that in turn gives me and Lewis a lot more freedom just to sort of fuck it up basically. So I think like I said, once somebody else comes in, like there's no point going back and thinking I'm gonna try and recreate it in the same way, because it just won't work. You've got to adapt, you've got to be patient, you've got to take time, and eventually it will come about. It just might not be in the way that you initially expect.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I was talking to Jacob, and I was saying about me and Jacob have different styles. Jacob kind of, I think, is more polished than certainly I am, but we've both said that like we couldn't play each other's parts because we have our own individual styles. And even in previous bands, I have, we've moved on with a bass player or whatever, and someone's came in, and then the dynamic has like really changed. And I think it's cool. Like it's something where like you're kind of apprehensive sometimes. You don't know what it's going to be like. And then when it happens and it's all good and it sounds different, you kind of be like, oh, it's a success and it worked. And I do think it's super cool. That is the final question of all the intensity. So we're going to go on to the last round, which is a quick fire round.
Sweet.
I'm going to throw some questions at you, and you just have to give your answer as soon as possible. So the first one is, what's your favourite biscuit?
Custard cream.
My favourite biscuit as well.
It's a great choice. It's a bit of a grandma biscuit, but I just like the when you have, I don't do it in like 2 bites. You got to do it in 1 bite. It's just like a nice like overdose of just like sweet jizz basically. It's just.
No, I do agree, and I like it as well because it's nice to eat normally, but also when you have a cup of tea, I always think it goes like really like soft and creamy, and I always fucking love that. But custard cream, I think so far in the series, is definitely probably the most loved. And there's a lot of people who turn around and are a bit snobby, like, oh, it's boring to say custard cream, bourbon, or like ginger nut. But I feel like it's hard to get away from something when it's like heroin, basically. It's like heroin in a biscuit, I think.
Heroin is famously quite hard to get away from, so I think that's definitely a good point.
I think it is. It's a fucking quality biscuit. The next question is Woody or Buzz Lightyear?
Woody. I really like the cowboy boots. I think it's the
the attire.
Yeah, I think it's maybe the slightly more you know, gay part of me leaning towards it. But yeah, I the cowboy boots. I think it looks hot.
I think Woody is out of the two of them. I like Buzz Lightyear, but Buzz Lightyear is a little bit of a like.
He's just like he's such a bloke.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, dude. Like,
He's the sort of person who like drinks Cowl at the pub. Whereas I feel like Woody would be the sort of person who might indulge himself in either a fancy cocktail or like a tropical IPA. So you know, but I think Woody's better than Buzz Lightyear. This next question is Haribo fried egg or Haribo hot?
Fried egg, I think. Yeah. I mean, I eat a lot of eggs in real life, so I think I should probably stay loyal. Really.
Stay loyal to the egg. Would you have a fried egg or scrambled egg?
Do you know what? I used to be scrambled egg. I used to be fried egg all the time, but I've recently been really enjoying a lot of scrambled egg, just with some cayenne pepper in it. Really nice. It gets the the nose bleeding.
Yeah, no, I like it as well. Have it with like a bit of smoked paprika as well. And I like doing it because obviously you can just do it basically when you're doing it on the cheap and you just do it like normally. And I do like it when you do it a little bit fancy, like Gordon Ramsay style, and you put in like milk and creme fraiche and you season it. It's just delicious. And then the final question is describe Faux Pas in one word.
Throbbing.
Throbbing? Why throbbing?
That is always my answer for this kind of question, where it's like a one-word thing. I don't know. I think throbbing is the right word. It feels throbbing when we play. You know, it just feels like it's kind of pulsating. I'm obviously talking about cocks at the same time, but yeah, it's yeah, that's the kind of feeling it gives to me. Like that kind of feeling where you would do like I don't know, where you'd start to feel the effect of drugs and it starts like going like vroom, vroom, vroom in your head. That's the kind of feeling it gives me. So
is it sort of like the kind of when you do like exercise and then you get the kind of feeling of once you've done it where you're like sweating and you're pulsating, where you feel like the endorphins and you're like on top of the fucking world. Now I think, to be fair, at first when you said throbbing, I mean I did kind of think, is it cock related? But at the same time, with your music,
it's partially cock related.
It is partly cock related, but with the music, I think throbbing's a pretty good one. I'm glad that you have a pre-prepared answer. That you've asked that one already. And that's it. I've had a fucking blast.
Yeah, me too, man. Thanks a lot for having me. It's been really sweet.
I hope you've had a good time, and yeah, that's it. So, wave to everyone watching. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Yeah.